This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
All right, we begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unified Purpose, the podcast where we share inspiring tales of compassion, resilience, and community spirit. I'm your host, Oliver, Penji's partnership advisor, and I'm joined here with a very special guest, Nia from the National Collaborative for Transformative Youth Policy, which we will shorten when I mention it again in the future. Thank you so much for joining me today, Nia.
Thanks so much for having me, Oliver. Excited to be here.
I appreciate that. So, like I said, we are going to do a small warm-up game called Pitch Me This. You'll have 30 seconds to pitch me a totally silly business idea. Ready?
Sure.
Okay, so the prompt for today is a restaurant where the menu changes every 10 minutes. Go.
Welcome to our restaurant where called Changes. We are unique because our menu changes every 10 minutes. You come in, and by the time you go to the bathroom and come back, you might have a totally different experience. By the time you step outside and wait for your friend and come back, you'll have a totally different experience. You can eat 6 different meals within an hour because of how our menu changes and rotates. If you like to try different foods and like to try them in rapid succession, this is the place for you. Come on down to Changes, bring your whole family.
I'll be there on opening day. I actually didn't thought much about it changes every 10 minutes. What if I go outside for a call and then I come back and the thing that I wanted to order is not there anymore?
Yeah, there could definitely be some problems with this model, but we're not focused on that right now because we're pitching.
Well, we are definitely unique. Yeah, definitely unique. So to start us off, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your story with TIP Collaborative? Sure.
So I live in Washington, D.C. I've been here for just over 20 years. And the National Collaborative for Transformative Youth Policy, or the TIP Collaborative, is a new organization. We were launched in March of 2024 with a mission of translating youth radical imagination into transformative policy and system change in close collaboration with young people and their communities. Now, we're in a kind of a unique place because we're a new organization, but we spun off from an older, larger organization. So we were the youth policy team at the Center for Law and Social Policy, or CLASS, for 20 years. Not me specifically, but some people were. And made the decision to spin off into our own organization to really be able to bring some of the work that we've been doing with us, but also to strengthen the ways that young people were involved in the governance and leadership of the organization, the ways that they were integrated across all the work that we're doing, and really let ourselves be led by young people in how we approach policy and advocacy.
That's great to hear. So it's been over almost a year and a half now, and this is as you have been an executive director. How have you seen the organization evolve from its, let's say, spin-off origins into now an independent youth-led advocacy force?
That is such an interesting question. This is actually not my first time starting an organization or being an executive director. So I did, back in 2005, start another organization here in DC. That organization is alive and well 20 years later and celebrating its 20th birthday. But I definitely had a lot of lessons learned from that experience as an executive director that I think have helped in this process. There are a lot of things to get off the ground as a new organization, just basic systems. Are we going to, what platform are we going to use for our email? What payment systems are we going to use? What payroll company are we going to use? What design company are we going to use? Who are we going to partner with for financial consultation, for all the different kinds of services that you need to be able to run an organization effectively and document it. So there was a lot of work even before we launched, but especially in the first 6 months, with just getting systems in place and getting things set up. And we made a lot of progress, but we're certainly not all the way there by any stretch of the imagination. I think the biggest thing that has changed with the spinoff is, again, there's really been some freedom in that process as we've been building and choosing these systems to pick the ones that are going to work for the way that we want to do the work, right? So we're working with young people, we're compensating them for their expertise. It was a little difficult at our prior organization to sort of bend the organization systems to do what we wanted them to do. Versus here, we were just able to pick a payment system that is very user-friendly and was going to work well for our young people. So I think that has been a big difference, as well as more freedom to sort of take different sets of positions or to participate in types of activities or types of advocacy that maybe weren't the norm at our prior organization. So I think we've been able to keep a lot of the good things that we started over there, and but grow and expand them and bring more of young people's leadership into more of our work.
That's great to hear. It's like a blank slate of sorts. We start with the foundations, things that maybe someone that's been, like you said, part of an organization that's been around for more than 20 years has already taken for granted, the design things, the email service provider and things like that. And just building that foundation, I'm sure it gives you like a sense of, we're building it this brick by brick, and it feels good to see.
Absolutely, for sure. And to really have a team of folks to work with on that.
Yeah, it's great. If I can do any parallels, I can see it as like a person joining a new job and learning the ropes of the new job. So in this year that you've been building all of these foundations, are there any milestones that especially moved or made you think, this is what we're meant to do?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that it has been a really interesting year to be in this space. We've had some major political changes in this country that have had a direct impact on our work. I think the things that always, for me, are reassuring that we're doing the right thing is when we have young people that are in our community who are expressing how much they value the spaces that we're creating and the ways that we are collaborating with them, when they're expressing how unique the experience is of working with us, when they are expressing solidarity and support for each other in really difficult times. I think that, to me, speaks the most about what we've built in the community that we're building, which really has to be at the heart at any kind of change that we're going to achieve.
Yeah, it's something hopeful to look out after, because these youth, they are the future, and if they learn how to be kind now, we can look forward to more kinder times in a more, let's say, kinder world than the one that we are looking out after now.
For sure. And there's, we have young people that we work with. People like to say young people are the future, but a lot of times they'll be like, but we're also right now, right? And I think that the ideas and the creativity that young people have really has a lot of possibilities within it. And that, to your point, the connections that young people are making from around the country through working with us. We were just talking about this with somebody yesterday, where we can see how the experience of somebody who's maybe in Los Angeles, what that has in common with somebody who's in rural Wyoming, and what that has in common with somebody who's in Georgia. Like, there are just so many points of connection for young people from all different parts of the country. And for them to be able to know folks that are having these experiences, be truly and authentically connected with them, and see what they have in common, I think has been really powerful.
It is indeed. If all of these youth connect like that, they connect in the programs that you offer, or let's say in any type of events? Can you tell us a little bit more about that, about the
Yeah,
programs the organization
we
has?
have. So one of our biggest projects is called A New Deal for Youth, which is an initiative that's 5 years old, where we have a network of young people from all around the country that are working together on a policy agenda by young people for young people. And we spent the first year of the project sort of building that agenda out and figuring what that's going to be. And it was really solid work because it stood the test of time. We haven't really had to make a lot of tweaks. It was sort of like, these are the things that young people say that they need. Now let's figure out how to make them happen. So that's one of the main spaces. We're in different working groups, mostly virtual, but at least once a year in person, we try to get together to advance the work, to make those connections, that sort of thing. But we also have other projects that we partner with young people on. We've done for a couple of years an event with partners in the state of Utah called the Youth Policy Summit, where we have policy presenters from around the country. We have young people from around the country that present these policies that are supposed to be helping young people, and then get real-time feedback from youth on a panel. And then we usually develop a report to go with it. So that's another space where folks connect increasingly in person. I think the first year we did it was sort of more peak pandemic, and it was much more hybrid, but the most recent one was very in-person focused. And then we've also we did a project called Youth Coaching Squad with some partners out of Massachusetts. Again, that was almost entirely virtual, but we had a group of 8 young people that we trained as coaches to provide support to other organizations that wanted to do a better job on youth engagement. So we would meet up with them once a month, we would do training, we would do brief sessions that they had, and then they would impart their expertise to partner organizations that were wanting to figure out ways to better integrate young people into their strategy. So we have lots of these different types of initiatives and projects where we get to bring different configurations of young people together to connect and work towards a common goal and to share their expertise.
Great to hear. You mentioned some of these policies that you guys review, you guys give feedback on. Are there any that stood out for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think, so there has been a trend around guaranteed income in different communities around the country, and there have been lots of pilots, some of them focused on young people. And there was actually a pilot that was done in Louisville, Kentucky, which then inspired a federal bill called the Young Adult Tax Credit Act, which, if it were to be passed, would make sure that young people between the ages of 16 and 24 would get $500 a month. That could help them with groceries, with rent, with transportation, whatever expenses they have at that key point in their life where they are making that transition from being a child to being an adult, and where things tend to be really tough economically. So I think that's an example of a piece of legislation that was, again, introduced by a Congressman McGarvey from Kentucky, and that would have a potential to make a huge difference for young people all around the country. Another one that we heard about at the most recent policy summit is some work that's also spreading around the country related to young people in the foster care system, where a lot of times the experience of being in foster care is super disruptive, super traumatic. And there is a policy that has been implemented in a number of states now where young people can identify whoever they feel like is their family and invite them into that process with them. So it could be a close friend, it could be a cousin, it could be whoever it is in that young person's network, where they feel like that is going to be the person who's going to best support them across that transition. And now there's sort of space created within the system, they call it soul family, to make those connections, whether it's people who you're actually related to or not, that can support you across that transition. We've also heard about really cool projects where we think about the age of consent, where young people can consent to getting certain kinds of mental health care or certain kinds of substance abuse treatment. And there are some places where either young people's consent is not required, or where they can be forced into treatment that they don't want, right?
Oh,
And so, looking at places that are changing the rules around consent to make sure that young people can get the kinds of cares that they do want and can't be forced into the kinds of care that they don't want. So those are just a couple of examples of some of the more exciting things that I think we've seen. There's lots of good ideas out here and lots of things that have been written, but unfortunately, not enough of it has been enacted. Yeah, for sure. Well, and then the last thing I'll say is we do have worked with young people to help them learn how to write their own legislation. And so, have seen them try and take the parts of their policy platform that nobody has created any legislation for yet, and now they're writing that legislation. So that's got everything from young people being required to learn disability history to young people, like consultation requirements for governments for like, you have to check in with young people before you implement policies that are going to affect them. And in our heart of hearts, we want to see different policies, but we also want to see the process be different for how policies are made and whose input we're seeking and who we feel accountable to in those processes.
yeah. And that exactly follows up to my next question, because I wanted to ask for me and for all of our listeners who may not know how this policy process goes. Can you give us like a quick recap of how the process goes from idea to reality?
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing is a lot of times we do a training that we call Policy 101. And where the first activity that we do in the training is we say, when we say policy, what do you think of? And the first thing that people usually say is laws.
Can I answer?
Oh, yeah. Leo, what's your answer?
So for me, a policy, I'm just giving a very broad answer on what I just heard in the last 20 minutes. Maybe like an idea to change a law or implement a law to help people.
Yeah, and that's a lot of times where people start. They think about laws, they think about rules. Maybe they might say the word regulations, although they're maybe less likely
I had that
to
word
know
on
that.
the tip of my tongue.
Yes, but a lot of these things that feel very distant and inaccessible, and we take folks through a process in this training where by the end we ask them the same question. They're saying words like power, like change. They're thinking about the ways that they can influence a process. So I think, like the things that people think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if I can add something small in there. You mentioned that these policies, people see it as something that's very far, and one of the many first things that I think when I hear a policy or law is that, okay, that's something that's done by my government, and it's only people in suits in a room and they make it, and that's it. I have no say in that, and they just do what they want with it. That's exactly. That's my first impressions of it.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people think, and that's the way that, to the extent that we're taught anything about this in school at all, right? Like that's a lot of the way that it's taught. But the reality is there is no one process. There's lots of ways to influence policy. Yes, getting to laws and legislation is one way, but budgets are also policy, right? Like how a government, whether it's state or local or federal, decides that it's going to spend its money, that's policy. This piece about regulations, right? Those are the rules for how laws are implemented. That's another place where people can have a lot of influence. This is something that I didn't even really know before I started doing policy work, but there's a process called public comments, where every time the federal government issues a new regulation, there has to be an open comment period where anybody who wants to can provide feedback. And based on their personal experience, based on their expertise, based on whatever, but literally there's a requirement that folks have to be able to provide input, and that the government officials are responsible for reviewing that input and responding to it. So that's another way that we sort of support young people to learn how to have input into the process, is through public comment periods. Then there's also things like research. Doesn't always influence policy as much as you might like, but sometimes, we're doing research to learn about what's working, what's not working. There is how are laws being implemented in different communities. And, there are a lot of choices that are sometimes made, which is why the way a policy is implemented in one state might look totally different from how it's implemented in another state and give young people totally different experiences based on where they live, right? And figuring out within the existing laws, how can we implement things better so that it's going to best support the young people in your community? That's another part of influencing policy. So there's no sort of one path, and there are lots of ways for folks to have influence that unfortunately, like most people are just not even connected to the channels of power in that way.
And most people are not aware of that. Didn't even know that I could comment on some of these new policies, new changes that the federal government wants to make. Like I said, I have this. For now, I'm only a citizen. I don't know much of it, so the law was was something that didn't even cross my mind that I could influence. But yeah, it's good to know that you are teaching these youth that they do have an influence in these policies, either by these comments that you said or in the process of the policy making. So of all of these policies that you mentioned, are there, and I know you told me that there is no single process for all of them, but which one do you feel is, let's say, the closest to officialization or something like that?
Well, right now that's tough. There is not a lot happening in Congress right now. There's just not a lot of legislation being passed, period, of any sort. And I think, one of the things that we did recently as an organization was do an explainer that talked about how the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was going to impact young people in terms of education, in terms of jobs, in terms of mental health and healthcare, sort of all these things, right? That again, a lot of times when policymakers are developing legislation, they're not thinking about specifically what that's going to mean for young people. Both because some policymakers don't realize that young people are even sort of a unique population with unique needs. And then there's sort of an effort to write policy. I don't know, sometimes I'm not sure who they're writing it for, but it's definitely not being written with young people's specific needs in mind. So I think it's a pretty tough environment right now in terms of the types of transformative policies that young people want and need. However, what I think is really important in this moment, and I'm really glad that you asked this question, is that someday the political winds will be different. And the only way we're going to get something better than what we've had is if we start preparing now. So there's a lot of work that folks have done to get us to where we are today. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get us to the vision that young people have for the future. And now is the time for doing that work. Otherwise, the opportunity will come and we'll still be spinning our wheels trying to figure out what the plan is.
Yep. It's like a kinder times, kinder winds will come our way. And we will be ready. We'll be ready for that. And there's something that I talked, there's a lot of nonprofits that I talk to, and they always have these, let's say, special insights about the things or the demographics that they are helping. So in your case, Nia, what's that one essential insight or perspective about the things that you do and the demographics that you are working with?
Yeah. So I think that, and we talked about this, the policy halls were not built for most of us, right? It's guys in suits that, you think of when you think of these spaces. And we really try and focus in on young people who are the furthest from those spaces, who because of past policy choices that the country has made, because of the way our economic system works, because of the way different systems of power operate in this country, are the people who historically have least been taken into consideration when designing policies. So we have a lot of young people in our network who have experienced homelessness, who have been in the foster care system, who have been impacted by the justice system. Maybe they didn't finish school, or they're the first in their families to go to college. They're immigrants. They had kids young. They have a set of experiences that are almost never considered in these spaces. And it's our belief that when we center the experiences of that set of young people, we're going to get to better solutions for all of us.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. And keeping in with the theme of looking forward, how do you envision the TIP Collaborative growing, let's say, over the next 3 years? Any major projects or something in the horizon for you?
Oh, great question. I don't want to say too much. I think one of the things...
No spoilers.
I know, no spoilers. Let me say how I can say this without giving away too much. Because we do live in a social media era where people sometimes feel like you have to put everything out in the world. Sometimes you have to move in secret a little bit.
Move in silence.
This is an analogy that I'm about to show my age, but this is an analogy that works terribly now. But I used to play basketball in high school. And the coaches used to say this thing, don't telegraph the pass, right? Which meant don't look directly at the person that you're about to throw the ball to, right? Like maybe you look over here and then you throw the ball over here, right? Again, the analogy falls apart on telegraph, whatever. But the point is the same, that sometimes you have to do things to advance an agenda and not give your whole strategy away in the process. But that said, I think in the next 3 years, we're really excited about collaborating with other youth-led organizations to build out the strategy and the vision for what a youth-led, youth-centered future would look like, in the same way that maybe other folks have built out other types of visions of the future. And then, again, figure out what do we do in the next 3 years to start getting us there, or to position us to get there when the right time comes. I think there's a lot of really exciting youth-led work all around the country in all different communities. And we want to be in partnership and in community with those folks, plotting together to get to our next steps.
Yeah, the collaboration is going to take us all very far. It's not only the work of one, it's like I might show my age too with this the Bugs movie from Pixar, where all the little bugs come together, hold their hands, and they realize that they're stronger. Something like that. Just you keep on working, making the move. Don't telegraph your past, and just keep on moving forward.
Yes, exactly.
So with that said, is there any legacy that you are hoping to impart or leave behind for all of the youth that may be listening now?
You know what? I actually want to speak to my peers. The more seasoned professionals is the nice term that I've heard for it from time to time. Having a space be youth-led does not mean that there's not space for older people. And that I think part of the challenge to our movements is the way that our generations get disconnected from each other. So instead of being able to build on the work that has come before, it's almost like we're starting over every generation. And I feel like, again, it's very intentional, right? It's sort of in the ways that we're taught history or not taught history, the ways in which we're sort of isolated, by generation within our communities and that kind of thing. But I think the message that I want to leave is that we're going to have to do this work across generations, and us older folks need to know when to step back and let others lead, but also know that we do have sort of wisdom and learnings that can be helpful as young people navigate what's happening right now, even if our reality was different when we were young. So just entering into conversations with humility and with a willingness to listen and learn and be inspired by young people's creativity, but also being open to staying connected and staying in community and just not making sweeping generalizations about other generations based on our own experience. Like, we all have to be ready to learn from and listen to each other so that we can move forward together.
Yep, it's like we are training wheels that will always eventually come off, and we'll have to let them soar. We have to let them fly into the future.
Absolutely.
Well, and with that great advice that you gave, Nia, we'll wrap up today's conversation. Thank you so much for sharing the impact the TIP Collaborative is having in the community on a global scale. For anyone listening, if you'd like to get involved, whether by fundraising or volunteering, you can check out the links in the description. And as always, thank you all for watching. And Nia, once again, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Oliver. This has been great.
Bye.
You've been listening to Unified Purpose, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.